All right, I love collecting sounds. New sounds, inspiring sounds that bring something extra to a track. It is costly, I know, but it is really exciting when you play that library for the first time and it just sounds amazing. There's a library I got about a year or two ago and it's just fantastic. And it just blows me away with how expressive and beautiful it can be every time I use it. And today, I want to share that library with you so you can see it in action. Hey, my name is Steve, composer, engineer, and lecturer, and welcome to the channel and this review. What I love to do is review some of my favorite titles, things that I use all the time, and this is by no means any exception. I've used this one quite a lot since I got it, as you'll see today. Spitfire Audio's Alternative Solo Strings is a wonderful collection of 4 individual solo string artists, London-based, that was recorded with Spitfire Audio for a particular project that I think Christian Henson was working on, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, I often live by the philosophy that a software library or sample library purchase is never a poor investment. For no matter whether you use it now or you don't use it for another 10 years, eventually there might be a day that comes along where you need that exact sound, and that is going to be a huge saver for you. So I often say that software library buying is not a poor investment because you're always collecting new sounds. Software libraries are designed with different purposes, different emotions, different textures. So it kind of makes sense to have different purposes. You can never really truly have one library that suits all because every library is recorded with a particular purpose. So having a robust sample library is something that you develop over time. You don't buy all in once, your wallet will not thank you, but it is something that's going to be helpful. When it comes to solo string libraries and when it comes to string libraries in general, there are hundreds to pick from, probably thousands. I have quite a few of them just from Native Instruments, from Heaviosity, from Spitfire Audio. There's some from Evolution series, from East West. There's a lot of different libraries that I own that are just string based or solo string based. The thing is though, they each sound subtly different. Sometimes they're subtle, sometimes it's an obvious difference, as is the case with this library. But every time I get a different expression, a different sound, which will fit a different purpose somewhere in my future compositions. I think we always kind of break open the box and, play around with it the first time that we get it, but then it kind of sits maybe on a computer hard drive until one day, there will be that project that requires that soft, alluring string sound, that your huge bombastic string sound from, I don't know, Spitfire Audio's Symphony library, but maybe it just doesn't work. But this subtle frozen strings one might. You never know. So in the case of this particular library, the Solo Strings library, the unique feature is that it has these alternative textures. I really can't describe it, you really have to hear it. So let's just dive in and play it. So I've just opened up an instance of Kontakt because it is a Kontakt-ready library. And I'm going to go looking for Solo Strings. Here it is, Alternative Solo Strings, and it has 4 players in there. The violin, viola, cello, bass, which is what you would expect from a quartet. And I'm just going to load up the violin to begin with. Now, I'm not going to be one of those reviews that goes in and dives in at every single control. Look, there's some great overview videos if you want to know how to use the library. I want to show you what the library sounds like and how it sounds inside compositions. So I'm just going to show you what the sound is like. In this library, you've got several articulations like you often do, several mic positions. You've got dynamics and expression, which I'm controlling here with some MIDI sliders. And this is what it's all about here, the alternative. Now, if I play the long here, which are just the standard longs, they sound beautiful, right? They're closely mic'd, it's very intimate detail, sounds quite expressive just by itself. What I'm more interested in though are these long alternative, and that's what makes this library super unique. When you play a note inside this articulation, instead of it just being the long articulation or legato, it kind of integrates these cool little performance trills and licks, if you like. It's hard to describe. I'm just gonna play a long note and you'll hear what I mean. How awesome is that? It's incredible. And basically it's just that they've asked the performers to do these little ornamentation things inside the long note, on the long note. It makes sense, and it has created a beautiful sound. Let's play some other notes and let's move between them. Strange, warpy textures, right? Now, one thing that you do have to do is when you're kind of like programming this in or playing this in, you will need to tighten it up a little bit and get these times, timing really locked in, because if you cut it halfway through an articulation, it does sort of sound like the musician was coming up with this expression and you just kind of clamped down on them and told them to just play the next note. That's not what you're after. So you do need to kind of finesse it a little bit in the MIDI. At least that's what I found anyway. I end up using the alternative as the long held notes a lot of the time. So I'll play the normal longs and then key switch to the alternatives to play that. That way those long held notes that play at the top full volume or something, that's the one that has the expressive details and the really cool stuff. And then the rest are just the average longs. So that's the violin. Let's check out some of the other instruments. The viola is absolutely fantastic, and I've used this quite a lot, which you'll see when I show you some examples. Really cool, right? And it's just that kind of close miking, that really intimate raspiness that I really love to the library. And that's across all of the textures, really. It's not just that alternative texture. Take this tremolo, for example. Oh, that raspiness is just so great, right? Even the pizzicato and the staccatos just have that texture, that very intimate detail, that intimate sound. The cello here. Really cool, lovely sounding. And even the basses get a look in as well. Chaos, practically, like just chaos. So you can really hear how some of those raspy details could just kind of add something new, right? New to your track and something entirely different. This is what I was talking about earlier. Sampling with a purpose, sampling with a bias. You have a particular sound you're seeking when you're sampling these instruments. You're not saying play me the style of playing for all music of every existence, because you'll be there for, well, basically years, and that sample library will be massive because you'll have to go through and resample the instrument in every perceivable type of style. It would just take ages. So when people are sampling, they often sample with a particular intent. They choose the microphones to that intent. They choose the instrumentalists, they choose the instrument types. All the articulations are chosen based on it as well. There's a purpose and a sound that you want to evoke with that sample library that becomes the sort of key cornerstone. That's why each sample library is a little bit different, or dramatically different, depending on the sample library. Let's hear this in context. So I've got 3 pieces I want to show you. Okay, so this first track, have you ever bought a sample library and just immediately heard the track that you wanted to write? This was one of those situations where the sound of the library just conjured up this particular feeling, vibe, and emotion that I wanted to write with straight away. So we all grab that sample library and make a track with it because we want to test it out and see what it's like, and it's the new shiny toy that we want to play with. This is sort of that track for me. If you want to hear the full track, you can find my SoundCloud link below. It's called Weathered Past. But here's a few examples of it. So it starts off leveraging these alternative raspy sounds, and it's a very kind of chromatic melody line for it. That section alone, you can really hear the violin at play there, but it's just those alternative textures, when woven in a little bit, just provide this extra sense of realism that helps kind of sell the whole thing. You know, without having to buy an orchestra's time or buy a string quartet's time to be able to record this, I can mock up my composition at home, you know, for my own enjoyment or for a client or for the final thing, because it sounds frankly pretty good. As the idea develops, all the instruments sort of come together. So let's have a listen to that. It's a really, really cool sound, right? Like, it's just got this raspiness and this openness that just, it's just great. But it can do quite calm, lovely lyrical lines as well, as evidenced by the cello in this next section. Again, those subtle little alternative, you know, textures in the top range, particularly in the violin there, just helping to sell the realism of the whole thing. It doesn't just sound like one note played with a little bit of vibrato. It's actually a real performer's interpretation. Now you could say there that my composition is limited by that, and you'd be true to some extent. I'm now starting to write towards this library's sound and this library's texture. But at the same time, I'd argue that it's also inspiration. It's providing you a direction that maybe never I would have gone in before. So to close out this track, it has an ABA type of format, and it has these wonderful kind of raspiness textures to the staccatos, or spiccatos I think they are. They're really cool, really earthy, and it just kind of finalizes this section really nicely. Really wonderful texture and something I really enjoyed creating. Another example here called Time Returns. I just needed a solo viola player, and I wanted to use a Spitfire alternative solo strings for sure. Just has this wonderful expressiveness. If I just play from somewhere around here, really cool expressive sound. I love how expressive particularly the viola is in this collection. It's just absolutely wonderful. Again, SoundCloud link, Time Returns is the name of the track if you want to check it out. The last track I want to show you again is the viola as a solo instrument above the orchestra, or the strings in this particular case. It just has such an expressive quality. It's beautiful, and I really think it sells some realism to it because of that. And that's a big advantage of this library. Why I keep coming back to it is because it sounds real, tangible, as if I actually recorded them. Definitely takes some finessing, you have to do it, and you know, I don't always do it well, but if you can spend a bit of time with it, you can get this sounding pretty damn close to real. So absolutely gorgeous. I hope from these 3 examples, you've been able to see what this library can really do, how it can function together, but how it can merge really, really well with other libraries to create that expressive solo instrument over the top. Check it out if you want. I don't really care, it's up to you. But if it's a sound that you think you're after, I definitely couldn't recommend it enough. Probably should have mentioned this is not sponsored or anything, but I didn't assume that I was big enough to have to worry about that. But I wanted to share what I enjoy about this library, so I hope you've been able to check it out. I hope it's useful. And if you want to check out some more of my favorite libraries, why not subscribe so I can release some more? So subscribe on your way out, but otherwise I will catch you in the next one.